Hello, my name is Josh, and today I'm going to do a review of the first 11 issues of Stan Lee's run on the Avengers, illustrated by Jack Kirby and Don Heck. I think going back to these initial issues, because for a while the Avengers was like a big blind spot for me when it comes to Marvel Comics and Marvel history. Because I've read a lot of stuff, from the 60s, but for some reason the Avengers was the stuff that I never really went back to. I think I read the first issue of the Avengers like a while ago, like a very long time ago when I was a very little kid. Um, so it's nice to be able to go back and read these, and I've got to say, man, reading these is a lot of fun because it's very pure Marvel superhero fun, you know? Um, it's like a pure articulation of the, like, bombastic fun, like, you know, look at these heroes and they're infallible, but they're also very inspiring, um, in spite of their flaws. Um, like they are good people, but they are also an abrasive bunch, that kind of a thing. Um, Something I really like about the Avengers in these early years that we've kind of lost as time has gone on is the kind of club aspect of the Avengers. The fact that they started out as more of a club and a communal, kind of like a public service thing, where they'll sometimes have meetings just so that they can get to know each other, not even if there's like a threat or a villain. And they also have to go to these meetings, like it is an obligation that they abide by each other, like they have their own set of rules, like they set that stuff themselves. It's just like a private club that they have. I think there's something really fun and cool about that. Um, like they don't pry in each other's lives, stuff like that. And I think what's interesting is we've gotten away from that now. I think nowadays, if we're doing the Avengers, commonly it's going to be a government run kind of thing where Shield or the American government is somewhat involved in the conception of the Avengers. And I don't know. I think I really I like that obviously because that brings about its own issues, and I think that there's a lot of really creative storytelling that's been brought up because of that. Um, but I think there's something really cool about the Avengers just being just like this club of these different kind of clashing personalities, each kind of representing something, and embodying a different kind of value. And I think there's just something really cool about that. Um, so no, if you can't tell my enthusiasm, I love these issues, and I'm gonna definitely continue reading the Avengers, um, like even further like this as well. I definitely think that the Hulk being such an abrasive member of the team is really fun. That's a very common thing that's brought up with people is that all the Hulk is like a very almost like an antagonist to the Avengers early on, and like yeah, like no kidding, like he leaves like in the second issue. you know he I really like the team up he has with Namor where they're fighting the Avengers and they're really angry. Um, Something I really like about um, there's a team up I never thought about, but I'm like, yeah, like of course they would team up. Like they're both super angry people who feel like they've been kind of slighted by humanity. Like of course they hang out with each other and plot some kind of machination against people. I thought that was really cool. Excuse me. I really like Baron Zemo and the Masters of Evil, and I like how Captain America and Zemo, I like their dynamic with each other. I like that Captain America, when he comes back, is someone who is an inspiring figure to the Avengers and to a lot of people, um, but he has a lot of stuff that he has to really reconcile with being someone who's come into the present. You know, he is struggling with a lot of emotions, during this time. Definitely struggling with grief, over the loss of Bucky. And I think that Rick Jones being there is kind of like an embodiment of that grief in a way, is really sad. Um, the scene where Rick Jones dresses up like Captain America, no, not Captain, the scene where Rick Jones dresses up like Bucky, is really, really, it's a very, very sad scene. Because like Captain America just flips out and he just can't take it, and it really shows that these books, even though the Marvel characters, I could hand these early issues to like a kid, and they probably wouldn't be able. There wouldn't be any issue, like these are definitely all ages books, but they are a lot more psychologically complex, um, than a lot of other things on the stands, and I think that was definitely another big like Marvel kind of trademark, is that these were infallible heroes that had real issues, that they really had to tackle and reconcile with, and that's like a thing that people say, but like when you actually read it, it's like, yeah, like these people are really grappling with stuff, Um, I think my favorite issue of the Avengers thus far is probably the Wonder Man issue, because I think um, Stanley and Don Heck were able to craft a story about a guy who was experimented on. By the way, Zemo kind of manufacturing a superhero, a fake superhero, to go in disguise. Definitely feels like a prototype for the Thunderbolts. Just saying. I think that's really fun that there's a genesis for that in a way. Um, that we have precedent for that. That like that is a thing that Zemo likes to do. Um, it's cool that Zemo. Cool. Well, that Zemo has made this guy, and you think, you know, he is like betraying the Avengers, and then eventually kind of discovers and comes to terms with some semblance of morality, and sacrifices himself for the Avengers. This is really sad stuff, and I think that you know, there's just something really special about the way Stan and you know, I this issue wasn't. I don't believe this issue was done by Jack Kirby. I don't know if Jack Kirby had anything to do with this particular issue on a creative side, but I think that that issue really embodies Jack Kirby's kind of idea of, like we can do better, and these stories being about people that, while flawed, have the capacity to be better and be better people, and you know reach for something beyond themselves. And I think that, Wonder Man is a very tragic figure, because he started out as a bad guy and eventually discovered, like, oh, like this isn't right, and then sacrificed himself. So I think there's something really beautiful about that moment, and I think that is my favorite issue of the book, I think. I also just really like Enchantress and Executioner as Thor villains, but also as Avengers villains. I think they're really fun. Um, I'm trying to think of other stuff. Oh, I really like Kang. He's a really fun villain, really wacky, really crazy, kind of concept, and it's just the quintessential like Avengers villain. Like this is a guy that like no one else could beat on their own. Like you have to have a team of people to fight this guy, and I think that that's really cool. That someone like Kang was introduced so early on, because he's pretty like fundamental to the Avengers kind of canon, like of like their villains, like Kang is the big one, or one of the big ones. Uh, I really like the issue of Spider-Man. I think that that was a really cool issue, because I I think what's fun is, again, I'm not sure if Steve Ditko had much input into the, um, I don't know if Steve Ditko had too much input on how Spider-Man was treated in this story, or how Spider-Man was written, rather, in this story. But I think it's cool that Stan Lee was able to recognize what was so special about Spider-Man in those kind of days. And by the way, Spider-Man is my favorite superhero. I love Spider-Man. And it was really cool to kind of see this story, and, like, Stan Lee, and Don Heck, they clearly understand, like, oh, like, yeah, like, of course, like, Spider-Man's the guy that, like, people don't really like this guy. Like he's kind of untrusted, and people aren't really sure about this guy. He's kind of like the superhero equivalent of, like, combining Charlie Brown and Larry David. Like, he's kind of like the loser who always, like, is given a lot of grief. But also he's like Larry David in that he's kind of apprehensive while also being super neurotic, at the same time. And I think that this story really gets that. The issue where Kang. It's funny too that Kang is, like, of all the superheroes I've been spying on Spider-Man. I've been watching him, and I think it makes a lot of sense because Spider-Man's very powerful, he's very strong, has super strength, and he has all these, like, crazy abilities. But he also isn't trustworthy, and he also is kind of seen as a villain. So it's not out of left field that someone like Spider-Man would be kind of, like, antagonistic to the Avengers. So it's a really, really smart plan on Kang's part, and it's just a really fun issue that it's like a crossover with Spider-Man without really being a crossover with Spider-Man. Spider-Man only appears, like, the actual Spider-Man only appears, like, towards the end of the book, of the issue, but it gets why Spider-Man matters to the Marvel Universe, or his place in the Marvel Universe, very well within those days, which is really fun. I like that Spider-Man, for a while, had a pretty consistent voice across, like, all the different books. It was cool. Um, I trying to think of other stuff. Well, I guess I should talk about Rick Jones a little bit in the Teen Brigade. I don't think we will ever see the Teen Brigade in, like, adaptions anymore, which is interesting. That's, like, a very rare thing to see adapted, um, which is interesting. But they're fun, and I like that they kind of chip in, and they kind of are like, oh, like, like, they clearly are, like, I kind of see them as almost like the audience kind of inserts, like, where, like, because these books are read by, like, kids, and you know, all ages alike. But, like, if you're a kid and you're reading this, and you read this, and you see the Teen Brigade, and you're like, oh, like, it's almost like the kids kind of chipping in for the heroes, and all that stuff. So I think that's really cool. And I like Rick Jones a lot. It's interesting. I think about Rick Jones more um, as, like, a Hulk supporting character, which makes sense. Um, but I also really like him here, as, like, a Avengers supporting character, and specifically as a Cap supporting character. Again, I really like the idea of him being like an embodiment of Cap's grief. I think that there's something really profound about that image, which is really cool. Um, yeah, I think that's all I really had to add, or had to say about this stuff. Just a really fun collection of stories, and I'm definitely going to keep reading this onward, and I'm going to keep kind of updating my thoughts on these, because these are really, really fun to go back to, and to read, and to talk about these off the cuff too is a really fun exercise as well. All right, so that has been that. Have a great day.